Well, being a feminist, pretty much in my mind, is it's a movement. It's a mindset to treat people with respect and a certain level of equality around whatever the expectation for the environment is, without putting gendered expectations, labels, or roles on somebody. In other words, not expecting somebody's with a boy to be tough and not emotional, or not expecting somebody perceived as a girl to be, dressing this way or that way.
Well, I think one of the biggest barriers is just sexism in general. And, we know that sexism and trans prejudice are inextricably linked. And the way that schools are set up in Georgia, it's very much divided. There's this dichotomy of male and female, and there is no in between. I mean, even in elementary schools, I'm an elementary school counselor right now. Everything is divided into boys and girls, and it's all, boys should do this and girls shouldn't do this. And so students learn at a very early age that they only have two options.
So I guess that's one of the biggest criticisms, is the complete silence around like trans issues or gay issues, and they didn't really explain feminism much either. They're just like, oh, okay, so Susan B. Anthony got women the right to vote, okay. I mean, that's like all the time they spend on it, which is pretty shallow. They really should talk about how like gender is fabricated, basically. I guess that's the thing that trans people point out. Like, our existence shows that their gender system isn't based in reality. It has real material effects, but there's nothing natural about it, you know what I mean? And maybe they should talk a little about that. I can see why, like, if you were straight, you would want to hold on to that, because it gives your life meaning.
To try to explain that gender and sexuality are like completely separate, like two completely separate things. Like, gender identity is where on the male to female scale, I guess, that you identify, or if you don't identify at all on that scale. Like, if those two, like, I don't know, it's complicated. That's the problem. Is that like the boxes that I'm trying to describe don't really exist to me, so it's really hard. It kind of almost destroys like sexism in my mind, because I'm just like, well, if gender is this fluid, then sexism kind of ceases to exist, which is kind of cool.
I've really started looking at my own gender, like, why do I describe the way I do? What are my experiences? And really getting real about messages I've taken on and I continue to give.
I, for instance, am straight, I'm Latina, I am cisgender, and so some of these identities have been a source of privilege, and others have been a source of oppression. And I feel like it's important for me to use those areas where I do have privilege as leverage to create positive change. And I've also learned to challenge gender stereotypes too, which, I've been guilty of myself in the past, time and time again. That gender really is fluid. There is much more than this false dichotomy that's presented to us of male and female.
And I think one of the things we've seen in Georgia lately is, unfortunately, we've had suicides of people who identify as queer youth or people who don't. We've had, major silences around transgender youth in schools. And so I think not only in Georgia, but we're trying to figure out just in the U.S. how to best support transgender youth.
The wide misconceptions that teachers have about transgender youth, or just transgender issues in general. There's still it's still quite common for teachers or educators to confuse sexual orientation or gender identity. Often school board members are a bit reluctant because they automatically think of issues about dress code and issues about the bathroom.
We can say we need to have open minds, we need to have an open heart, and we also need to be very real about some of the, hatred, fear, and violence that exist as well. And that's why I think truly, if we're going to get good at supporting these youth, we have to get good at being allies. It can't go on this way anymore.
Well, I went in early to take a math test, and basically, like, this guy grabs me by the back of my jacket and pulls me into the bathroom and beats the crap out of me because he thought that I was hitting on his girlfriend. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know who your girlfriend is. Like, I don't care. Like, and he just beat the crap out of me, but they caught him on camera. So, I mean, he apparently wasn't that smart. It was pretty sweet getting him expelled. But I think it was a really good thing, though, that the school did react really quickly. And I think they had, like, the completely appropriate response, which was to expel him. Like, that's crap. Like, if you did that outside of high school and you weren't a minor, you would be in jail, hopefully. It's called a hate crime. Hello. But I think they definitely sent the right message with what they did.
A situation I could recall is it was a group of kids. It was a bunch of guys, and my good friend, he was fairly feminine, very feminine, very, and they didn't like that. They didn't like that at all, and like they would go back and forth. They would go back and forth, but at one point we were on our way home, and they jumped him. Nobody was around for that, and we come back to school and it's like, he's beat up. That was one of those things that was like, damn, but nothing happened. Like, nothing never happened in school. Like, that's the crazy part. The most I ever had to do was I ever got into was an argument with anybody. I thought I might have to fight because I wanted to dress the way I wanted to, and I wasn't gonna take crap anymore. I was about to curse.
I guess the first problem from me being trans that came up, it wasn't even directed at me. I don't always notice how other people are perceiving me. Like, I don't really pay attention much to that. But apparently they had taken notice of my being trans for a while because, like, changes from hormones and stuff. So, like, the first thing that happened really was actually my brother started getting harassed because of me. So, like, his friends were like, "Hey Henry, what's going on?" And like, he, like I said, it was hard for him to handle it at the time. Because, like, he had a lot of other stuff going on too. So, like, it really made him upset and kind of angry about it. The other thing I remember was when I graduated, when I go get my diploma, they call your name, you walk up there, you get your diploma, and then you walk down back to where everybody else is sitting. While I was walking back down, like, some kids just like, "Hey, why are you turning into a girl?" Like, just yelled it at me, and I'm just like, really? Because, like, I couldn't see who said it, and I kind of like, I don't know, just kind of like, well, why didn't you say that to my face? Because, like, I totally would have explained it to you. I mean, you asked me a question, so you don't ask a question if you don't want to answer. And maybe you're not going to understand it, but I'd feel better if I said something about it.
Absolutely, bathrooms can be a really scary place for transgender students, and often many transgender students will not go to the bathroom the entire day when they're at school because it is such a scary place. So it's important for schools to have bathrooms that are gender neutral, where these students can feel safe, even if it's just the nurse's office, just somewhere that these youth can go to use the bathroom. Once educators are aware of what's going on, if they're aware of the statistics and the challenges faced by transgender youth, they really do start taking those steps to do something, and that's what happened to me.
Also ask them how they verbalize about themselves, if they assert any, different name than maybe what they were assigned, or maybe if they assert different pronouns or different sex than they were assigned at birth. We try to get them to think more about the language that's assigned to their bodies and their identities, because that is the single most alterable factor in gender, if you think about it. One resource that I would suggest for anybody who wants to know more about being a trans ally, particularly in the school environment, is Bending the Mold. This is a publication put out by Lambda Legal, and there's a glossary in here of least restrictive terms. In addition, there are resources on the Georgia Safe Schools Coalition website.